Hello? Hello? Yes, it is. Yeah? Yeah? Okay. I'll tell them. Bye. Jesus just called. He wants his church back. Do not be conformed to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. I'm not sure you can really call yourself a Christian if you're not living at least a little bit out of step with the world around you. One of the reasons I was so excited to come to this church was because it was the place where some of my favorite, oddest people were, like Bill Barnes and Bill McNabb. For those of you who remember, Bill just preached for us a few weeks ago. Both of them friends with Mike Yaconelli, my hero in the youth ministry world. These were the guys who started youth specialties. And the Wittenberg Door, which is basically Christianity's version of The Onion, also started Amore Ministries that both of our churches will be going down to Mexico to build houses with in the fall. Bill McNabb actually helped launch it with Mike Yaconelli. They both sat on the first board. These guys were my rock stars. And one time when I was in seminary, I had the privilege of picking Mike Yaconelli up at the airport to take him to Princeton for a weekend conference he was doing, and I got to take him out to dinner and spend the evening talking with him. And at the end of the night, I asked him if he had any good advice for me as I prepared for ministry, and I will never forget him leaning across the table, looking me straight in the eye and saying, "Dave, you can't be a Christian in today's world unless you're willing to be at least a little bit weird." And so today, I want to take a few moments to encourage us to ask ourselves an important question, maybe more important now than any time I can remember. Am I at least a little weird? Do I allow my faith to make me a little odd or offbeat? To make me a bit of a misfit in this world? Because it should. If we take our faith and this calling to be disciples or followers of Jesus Christ seriously, it should cause us to be a little out of step, a little unfashionable or unconventional in the world and all of the circles that we run in. Because we are not our own. Are we all clear on that? We belong to God. And it's funny right now for all the conversations that both of our churches are having about preserving our own unique identities when we get together in a combined service like this. It's probably a good reminder for all of us to remember that this is not our church. This is not my church, your church. This is not Pally Church or BPC's church. This is Jesus' church, which should put us a little bit out of step with the world around us. In fact, the more you read and study the scriptures, the more obvious it becomes that this gospel that we study and preach and claim allegiance to is a call to a radical, revolutionary, countercultural movement that, if taken seriously, should put us squarely at odds with the status quo and the powers that be. It's been said that you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you weird. Paul said, if anyone is in Christ, he or she is a new creation. The old has gone. The new has come. In the book of Philippians, Paul says that when we become disciples of Christ, we become citizens of a new kind of commonwealth, a new kingdom, a kingdom that is the kingdom of God. Because when we begin taking Jesus and his teaching seriously, it changes us. It ruins us in the best possible way. To be a follower of Jesus Christ is to be part of God's upside-down kingdom, where most of our society's norms and accepted values are turned on their ear. This is why it seemed like every time Jesus opened his mouth, he was always saying, well, you've heard it said, blah, 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 but I'm here to tell you it's just the opposite of what you've heard. In Matthew, you have heard it said that it's an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I tell you, do not resist an evil person. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other also. And if anyone wants to sue you and take your shirt, hand over your coat as well. If anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2 miles. Give to the one who asks you, and do not turn away from the one who wants to borrow from you. You have heard it said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moths and vermin destroy, where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moths and vermin do not destroy, where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Therefore, I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body, what you will wear. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothes? But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all of these things will be given to you as well. Do not judge, or you too will be judged. For in the same way you judge others, you will be judged, and with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Following Jesus, it messes with you. It messes with all of your relationships and values and priorities. Messes with your goals in life, what you want out of life, how you define and measure success. It messes with the way that you understand and conduct your career, how you spend your money and your free time. It changes what you consider important, who you hang out with, the kind of jokes that you're willing to tell or even laugh at. If you take Jesus seriously, it should begin messing with your social status and even your politics. Once you allow God's kingdom, God's priorities to become your top priority, you suddenly begin to see that whatever your political affiliation, that each party has certain things that you can support as a Christian and other things that you really can't, which should leave you somewhat adrift, not easily fitting in anywhere. This Tuesday, we're all going to the polls for the LA primaries. And I want to be really crystal clear here. Neither of our churches will ever endorse a political candidate, because we honestly believe that each party, each candidate, will embrace certain policies and take certain stands that we think Jesus would applaud, and others that we believe Jesus would question. But having said that, each one of us, Republicans, Democrats, somewhere in between, we should be asking ourselves which policies we think Jesus would embrace, which candidate we think comes closest to Jesus' values, and then vote accordingly. And I have to say, how cool is it that right now one of our own pastors, a Presbyterian pastor, a PCUSA pastor, is one of the top candidates for LA mayor. And of course, not everyone here is going to agree with Ray Wang's policies or politics. And she very well may not become one of the top candidates to go through on Tuesday. But how cool is it that if she doesn't go through, at least part of the reason is that she's refused to back down from standing up for the things that she honestly believes Jesus would want her to stand up for. That she doesn't mind sticking out or looking a little weird for the cause of championing God's causes, even if it costs her the election. Which has to make you stop and wonder what the chances are that Jesus would be elected if he ever ran for LA mayor or Congress or governor or president of the U.S. Because being a little weird, not fitting in our society's pre-prescribed roles, that's the faith that you and I have signed up for. Which in an odd sort of way is both a comfort and a challenge. A comfort in that it doesn't matter who you are or what you're like. There is a place for you here. You don't have to be perfect or beautiful, talented, powerful, or successful. Excuse me. You don't even have to be normal to be loved and accepted and valued here. Your worth as a person doesn't come from what you do or what you don't do, from who you know or how well you fit in. In this place, in this family, both of these families, your value and worth is a given that comes without reservation, solely from the undeniable conviction that you are God's beloved, that you are God's precious, infinitely loved child and masterpiece. Out there, the things that make us different and unique are often frowned upon. But in here, our uniqueness is a cause for celebration. Being different, being a little weird, is the quality that adds color and texture, variety and beauty to life. Because here in the church, we don't value the same things that the world values. To be a Christian and live out your faith in authentic Christian community is to stop being afraid that you aren't good enough or look the right way. It's to stop trying too hard, to stop pretending that we're something we're not. It's to let our guards down and be ourselves. I told you last summer when we were sharing our faith stories that the first time I walked into my church that I grew up in, I felt like I had stepped into some kind of alternate universe. I was immediately pulled in and accepted and embraced, just as I was. I didn't have to prove anything. I didn't have to be cool or even pretend that I was cool. I was immediately welcomed and loved and included. And it changed me. It completely and permanently changed me. I can't even tell you how safe and free, how seen and accepted and loved I felt there every Wednesday night in that youth room of ours. Want to know what was painted on the wall of that youth room for all 4 years? They took this cartoon and they turned it into a giant mural. I was like, oh yeah, you can kind of see that. I was scared it was going to be super pixelated. They had kind of stretched out this into an entire wall of all of these mean-looking fish swimming in the same direction with the little Christian fish swimming against the current, with a giant banner up above on the entire wall saying, "Go against the flow." That image, that phrase, it got inside of me. We used to sing every week. Oh, wait a second, I didn't bring it up. From this book, do any of you know the Songs in Creation songbook? Anyone here? Oh, Grace is the only one. Okay, we're getting really old. But Our church used this, BPC used this for their youth group. It used to be the old Young Life songbook. And it's filled with all of the Christian Catholics. Interesting mistake. It had all the Christian classics like Lord, I lift your name on high, seek ye first, they'll know we are Christians by our love. But it also had songs like Little Boxes and Where Have All the Flowers Gone? And If I Had a Hammer. Our youth pastor used to tell us that if he could do anything for us, he wished that he could open up our skulls and pour in a set of tools that we could use to question everything that this world tells us. Everything that the world tells us is true and real and important. To question everything that we see and read, everything that we hear, every show we watch, every song we listen to, everything that we were taught and told in school. And I started to understand that becoming just another little box on the hillside, a little box filled with ticky-tack, was not going to be my goal in life. I started to realize that I wanted to live life a little different, be a little weird. I wanted to be more like that revolutionary, rebel-rousing, radical man that we were learning about in Bible studies and our rap group. So this calling to be weird is a comfort, but it's also a challenge. I mean, let's face it. For most of us in this sanctuary this morning, the real challenge is to look any different from the society around us. There's a lot of pressure out there, especially these days, to fit into one of the competing narratives and then become like everyone else, or at least in the circles that we hang around in. And the reality is that most of us, especially we mainline Protestants, especially we Presbyterians, particularly in a church like ours, in this part of the country, this part of our city, we've all become pretty good at this whole fitting in business. There's a lot of payoff, a lot of perks to fitting in, not challenging the status quo, especially right now. What Jesus tells us is that if we fit in too easily, something's wrong. Even the church gets caught up in the pressure to conform. Truth is that the typical Christian church in our society, particularly the typical mainline church for many years, has been every bit as much about creating and indoctrinating good and respectable citizens of whatever country and culture they reside in, as we have been about preaching the radical, subversive, countercultural gospel of Jesus Christ. The truth is, if we are all taking Christ and his gospel totally to heart, we'd have the FBI and CIA, ICE, and Homeland Security sitting up in that balcony every day, just trying to keep tabs on what we're going to do next, what wild, radically loving thing we would be doing next. In his book, Resident Aliens, my professor at Duke, William Willimon, argues that the cooperation between church and state, working together to create a shared but compromised Christian culture, to instill Christian values, began in 313 AD, when Constantine signed the Edict of Milan. And it didn't end, at least not here in the U.S., till a Sunday evening in 1963 in Greenville, South Carolina, when in defiance of the state's time-honored blue laws, the Fox Theater opened its doors for the first time on a Sunday afternoon. That since that day, we, meaning the church, has been slowly losing our grip and our control over society. And while many bemoan the loss of status and prestige and privilege that our church is experiencing in our culture right now, Willimon and many Christian scholars actually applaud the shift because it gives us the opportunity to examine and address all the ways that we've tended to sell out our beliefs in order to remain the little darling, even the pet, of our society's dominant power structures. Our Jewish brothers and sisters have always been so much better at this than we are. Throughout all their various exiles, they were well acquainted with what it felt like and meant to be strangers in a strange land, telling their children, that's fine for everyone else, but not for you. You're special. You're different. You have a different story, a different set of values. That should be our story as well. This may be what we've been missing out on for the last 1,700 years. This loss of prestige and status that we're experiencing right now gives us a chance to recapture some of our uniqueness, to take some stands, to stick out and be weird. Let me close with this. One of my best friends, my old young adult director down in Houston, Jim Teal, was working as the associate pastor at the First Presbyterian Church of Salt Lake City, Utah, when they began having a bit of a problem. It seemed that their nice, refined fellowship hour was getting crashed every week by a significant number of the city's homeless population. Each Sunday, the congregation would leave the sanctuary after the benediction, only to be met by 20 or 30, unshowered, unkempt, unrefined men and women in ratty clothes who had polished off all of their cookies, pastries, and donuts, were tilting the coffee urns to try to get the last few drops of coffee, leaving everyone in the congregation hungry, making polite conversation and fellowship virtually impossible. It quickly became apparent that something had to be done. And so they did what Presbyterians always do. They called an emergency session meeting. And you know what they figured out? They figured out that this cannot keep going on. And so they stopped serving cookies and pastries and donuts and replaced them with big bowls of pasta salad and fresh fruit, a sandwich bar, and fresh cut vegetables with hummus. They encouraged their homeless friends to invite their friends. Created one of the most unconventional, if not downright weird, fellowship hours any of us had ever seen. So let me ask again. Are there things about your life that don't quite fit into the world around you? That make you stand out as a bit of a loner or sore thumb? And in what ways do you think God would want you to be a little weirder, a little odder in your life and in your circles? Especially in these days of hyper-partisanship and the pressure to conform and choose sides is so great. This expectation to fit in and then to judge and vilify the other side, it's become our national pastime. In what ways would God like to see you fit in a little less? Stick out a little more? In what ways could you be a little weirder for the glory of God? Amen.